This month, I'm going to be doing something a little different thanks to this video's sponsor, MacroFactor. I'm going to be using their app to log every single calorie I consume, and I'm going to be following the custom program that MacroFactor builds for me. And at the end of the month, I'm going to show you the results. It may sound like a lot of effort to input into a phone all the stuff that you eat or drink or whatever, but that's actually the beauty of MacroFactor. Not only does it have a vast database of food you can quickly search, but you can also build your own custom meals and recipes, and MacroFactor will tell you the calorie content based on the ingredients. Best of all though, and this is the feature I use the most, you can actually just take a photo of a plate of food, and MacroFactor will then utilize its AI whatever to tell you the contents of that bowl of food, its ingredients, and all their caloric content. So that's basically how I input everything into MacroFactor, and it literally couldn't be easier. After that, MacroFactor regularly updates your caloric and nutrition targets based on your goals and progress, which keeps you on track if you happen to start falling behind. It's like having your own personalized dietitian or nutritionist that you can just check in with whenever you like, and that's obviously fantastic. So I'm going to be seeing how much I can accomplish over the next 30 days, and if you'd like to join me, it's easy. Just click the link below or search MacroFactor on the app or Google Play stores. Be sure to use offer code SKILLUP when signing up to get 14 days for free. That's offer code SKILLUP for 14 free days. Thanks MacroFactor for sponsoring the video, and now let's get to it. Gamers, holy shit, I can scarcely think of a worse week than this one. Xbox completely shreds the last of its brand cash with this insane price hike. Madden is now owned by the Saudis and Jared Kushner, and our tech overlords have rolled out not one but two infinite slot machines in a single week. Honestly, shit is just dire as hell out there, but we gotta talk about it whether we like it or not, so here we go. Hey, remember when Xbox was cool and we liked them? If you don't, I don't blame you, because it feels like a very distant memory now. But there was a time when it wasn't at all cringe to be excited about the future of Xbox as it charted its course back from its disastrous Xbox One era. The Series X was cool and powerful, and the Series S was a nice entry point. Xbox had bought up a boatload of cool studios with the promise of regularly releasing lots of first-party exclusives that justified your hardware purchase, and the crown jewel in Xbox's offering, Gamepass, was riding high. The only subscription service of its type, and a deal so good that it was basically a no-brainer. Like, if you played video games regularly, it just made sense to be subscribed to Game Pass because the value on offer was not at all commensurate with the cost. In a good way. How times change. A few short years later, and Xbox has released basically zero truly system-selling exclusives, resulting in them abandoning the exclusive strategy altogether. They've also all but abandoned hardware, and no, their upcoming $1,000 handheld is not proof of their commitment to hardware, it's actually proof of their willingness to offload manufacturing to third parties. But let's not get sidetracked here. Game Pass truly was the last bastion in Xbox's losing brand war. It was the one thing that people could point to and be like, well, everything else sucks, but this is still a really good deal. And they were right. Even after a price increase back in 2023, Xbox Game Pass was a really great deal, delivering you hundreds of back catalog games and dozens of day one titles at a fairly reasonable price. In fact, some said too reasonable. There was always a lingering question hanging over the head of Game Pass, and it was simple. If you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to develop these big blockbuster AAA games, and you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to secure a third-party library, and if you're charging me only 15 or 20 bucks a month to get access to all of that, how is that profitable for Frito-Lay? I mean, Microsoft. Well, it seems as though we finally have our answer. It wasn't. And with the Xbox business rapidly transforming, it looks like Satya Nadella is finally ready to balance the Game Pass P&L. So here's what happened. This video went out yesterday, excitedly explained that Game Pass is getting better. Interesting to note that it was not fronted by Phil Spencer, Matt Booty, or Sarah Bond. I guess they didn't want their faces anywhere near this one. The video buried the lead in the sense that yes, Xbox is getting better, that is a fact, but it's also getting more expensive. In fact, it's a lot more expensive, but we will come back to that. Let's talk about those improvements first. So PC Game Pass stays the same, but there are now three newly reconfigured Game Pass tiers for console and cloud players. The first one is called Essential, which gives you Xbox Live multiplayer, though they don't call it that anymore. It gives you a library of 50 games, it gives you some rewards and perks in games, including Riot games, and most importantly now, it allows you to play using cloud. This is low-key one of the most important parts of this entire announcement, because now there's a fairly cheap entry point into the Xbox ecosystem that allows you to play games without buying any hardware. That's not broadly appealing at this point, but its popularity is growing, and I suspect it will only grow further as the cost of hardware continues to increase, particularly next generation, when consoles are likely to be eye-wateringly expensive. Essential remains $10 a month. Next up is the premium tier. This one will get you more than 200 games, less wait times when you're using cloud gaming, and most importantly, first-party Xbox games will arrive on the service within 1 year of their launch date. Premium tier will also remain the same price at $15 a month. Now hold on to your wallets, because here comes the money shot. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate is getting some big upgrades and an equally big price increase. and now delivers a guaranteed 75 day one games per year, a mix of first and third party titles, of course. That's roughly 50% more day one games than the service has delivered in the last 12 months, so that is an upgrade, no two ways about it. The back catalog library has also been upgraded, since you continue to gain access to both the full Game Pass library and EA's back catalog of games, but you'll now also gain access to Ubisoft's Classic, which is their back catalog, adding approximately 85 Assassin's Creed games to Xbox Game Pass. It doesn't stop there though. If you are 12 years old, you'll be thrilled to learn that Xbox Game Pass Ultimate will now include the Fortnite Crew Pass, which is basically a battle pass and some V-Bucks every month. But wait, there's more. The cloud gaming experience is also improved, delivering 1440p streaming with the shortest possible wait times. So how much are you going to be paying for all this new goodness? Well, it's 50% more in US dollars. Game Pass Ultimate will go from $20 US to $30 US. And mind you, in July 2023, this service was $15 US a month. 16 months later, it's increased in price by 100%. Absolute insanity. The backlash to this was pretty crazy. We've had plenty of news cycles where people were mad at Xbox recently, but this one has easily been one of the biggest and the maddest, with basically everyone decrying the size of the hike and its suddenness, given that it was only last week that Sarah Bond declared that Game Pass was profitable, and it had pulled in $5 billion in revenue and it was never doing better, which really should have been all the warning we needed. Since the last time Microsoft said something like that, they sacked 9,000 workers and closed a bunch of studios. The backlash was so intense that the Microsoft subscriptions management page crashed because it couldn't keep up with the sheer number of people trying to cancel their subscriptions. Not exactly the result you'd be hoping for when your press release leads with Xbox Game Pass just got better. Ryan McCaffrey of IGN wrote a pointed op-ed titled, "This Xbox generation will be remembered for one thing, greed." And I think it's an interesting jumping off point for my own thoughts on this price hike. I don't disagree with McCaffrey, but I also think the last 10 years has really sharpened our viewing lens through which we view the actions of large corporations. And as wages and living conditions stay low, corporate profits have skyrocketed. When Phil Spencer wrote earlier this year that Xbox had never been stronger or more successful, while also announcing mass layoffs and studio closures, we're all wise enough to the playbook now to realize that we're on the receiving end of a long con that's predicated largely on spin and gaslighting. But here, in this instance, I don't attribute this massive and sudden price hike to greed. Rather, I think it's Xbox finally coming clean on the true cost of Game Pass all these years later. Because we've all known, deep down in our jellies, that the Xbox Game Pass model didn't make sense. It was a great deal, for sure, but when Microsoft is spending hundreds of millions of dollars to develop these games, and when they let us play them for $15 or whatever, that never made sense. And this is why those claims of Game Pass profitability were always so hotly contested, because we knew the music had to stop at some point, and today's the day. Now, I'm going to say some stuff that I'm sure is going to tank the dislike ratio of this video, but I'm going to say it anyway. I don't think that Xbox Game Pass Ultimate is overpriced given how much it delivers. I think this is more about Xbox breaking yet another promise rather than Microsoft attempting to price gouge. Because imagine, if you will, a new service comes along from, I don't know, Best Buy or whatever. Okay, so it's their big push into gaming. They're offering you a constantly updating library of more than 400 games. They are promising you 75 day one new release games every single year, including some of the biggest and best games in a given year, stuff like Forza and Gears and Call of Duty and Elder Scrolls 6. You don't need to buy any hardware to play this stuff other than a controller. You can enjoy it at 1440p resolution on almost any device with a screen, and there's no wait times to do that. Plus, you get access to all sorts of perks and rewards across some of the biggest gaming ecosystems in the world, namely Epic Games and Riot Games. Like, imagine if that service debuted today, what would that generally be worth? Personally, I think something in the vicinity of $30 US a month sounds about right if you plan to make use of all of those features. But the reality is, not everyone will make use of all of these features. In fact, most won't. The person who cares about V-Bucks probably isn't interested in Tim Schafer's next game, and the person who's interested in Fable probably doesn't want to play on cloud. Game Pass Ultimate is now a really weird product that has stuffed a lot of stuff into it in an attempt to pull in a variety of audiences, and with all these upgrades being so disparate, the price hike seems unwarranted and unjustifiable. But more than anything else, it just feels like another backflip, another broken promise in a generation where that's been Xbox's biggest exclusive, disappointment. They've sworn black and blue that Xbox Game Pass was profitable, and so people bought into this ecosystem expecting this level of service at this price point. But now that same service is 50% more expensive or 100% more expensive if we're charting it from July 2023. I look at that premium tier at $15 US per month and I think, okay, that makes sense. That feels right. And it's what I've been saying for a while now. The idea of back catalog on subscription services makes sense, whereas day one AAA games, It just never did. It felt too good to be true, and it was. Xbox pioneered the subscription model, and with their deep pockets, they had hoped that they could build a service with over 100 million subscribers, the Netflix of gaming indeed. And at those subscriber counts, maybe it does make sense to put Call of Duty on their day one, but Game Pass growth plateaued long ago, so that 100 million target is now an impossible dream, and Microsoft's way of coming to terms with that is to start charging a price point that's targeting a more narrow set of consumers, hoping that everybody else will gravitate towards the lower tiers or ideally buy a few day one new release games at full price. And so here, at the end of all things, Sony is on top once again, as their back catalog focused subscription model has delivered strong bottom line growth while also protecting the margin that comes from day one sales, and you don't have a legion of fans who suddenly feel hoodwinked by one of the most sticker shock inducing price hikes in video game history. But no, Phil, Sarah, and Matt, they're doing really great work, and I'm still glad they're in the job all these years later. It's been a rocky 10 or so years, but 2026 is definitely going to be Xbox's year, ladies and gentlemen. I can feel it. If you're feeling sad about the state of Xbox, might I suggest a trip to Saudi Arabia to attend the Riyadh Comedy Festival. There, comedians like Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle, and Pete Davidson can regale you with edgy jokes approved by the Saudi royal family. Oh, what's that? You can't make it to Riyadh? Well, don't worry, because Riyadh's coming to you, courtesy of a $55 billion purchase that makes Saudi Arabia the proud owner of EA Games. You know their motto, EA Sports. It's in the Middle East. I wish I could take credit for that, but I saw that joke on Twitter. It's not mine. Man, where to begin with this one? Jesus. Okay, so this story was first reported by the Wall Street Journal, who said they heard rumblings that a consortium backed by Saudi money was looking to effect a leverage buyout of EA, taking it private in what would be the largest leverage buyout deal in history. The reporting turned out to be 100% correct when EA announced this week that it was no longer a publicly listed company beholden to investors, but will soon become a private company beholden to the Saudi royal family. The reason for this is that the deal is being funded by the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, as well as a group called Silver Lake, who are big-time technology investors. Rounding out the consortium is Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, who has been given billions and billions of dollars from the Saudi Arabian government just because it's nice to do business with the president's son-in-law. The purchase price is an eye-watering $55 billion, which makes it the largest leveraged buyout in history. And if you don't know what that means, then you aren't sufficiently worried about what this is going to mean for EA. Leveraged buyouts are when companies borrow money to buy things, so they need to pay back not only the interest on the loan, but also look to turn a profit. That is why leveraged buyouts are very often bad for almost everyone other than the investors, because profitable parts of acquired businesses are often spun out, while everything else is left saddled with unsustainable debt. Now, is that going to happen here with EA? Hell if I know, but it's certainly a risk since the buyout involves $20 billion in debt financing, resulting in an interest bill that's probably as large as EA's total operating profit for 2024. If you ask EA CEO Andy Wilson, though, everything's going to be just fine and dandy. Quote, "We are entering a new era of opportunity. This is one of the largest and most significant investments ever made in the entertainment industry. Our new partnerships bring deep experience across sports, gaming, and entertainment. They are committed with conviction to EA. They believe in our people, our leadership, and the long-term vision we are now building together." End quote. Does the Saudi royal family really believe in EA's people, leadership, and long-term vision, though? Something tells me there's a bit of a cultural misalignment. For one thing, Saudi Arabia is not exactly a fan of the LGBTQ community, whereas EA's culture is very progressive, and their games, particularly The Sims, specifically seek to welcome in diverse audiences. That's definitely something that numerous EA developers have voiced concerns about on social media, and I think that's a totally legitimate concern. But the more pressing one is that debt financing and what it does to a company. It forces cost cutting, and where can EA cut costs right now? Pretty much anywhere that isn't making sports games or shooters. BioWare is the obvious culprit, right? Like, do you imagine this consortium is interested in giving that studio another few years and, I don't know, $30 to $50 million to hash out a Mass Effect game in pre-production and another $150 million to make it or whatever? What happens to the EA Originals program? You think EA are going to take punts on new IP single-player games? I don't think so, man. Forget all about that. Gets worse though, because apparently the new owners are looking to AI to cut costs and boost profit. That's according to the Financial Times, who wrote, quote, "The deal is a huge bet that artificial intelligence can significantly cut EA's operating costs, allowing the equity consortium to manage a large debt load on a company that historically carried limited net debt. The investors are betting that AI-based cost cuts will significantly boost EA's profits in the coming years," people involved in the transaction told the Financial Times, end quote. So look forward to annualized Battlefield games made by AI, ladies and gentlemen. The future is very bright indeed. Jokes aside, I don't really know what this means for EA, in the sense that I don't know how much the Saudis want to reshape EA's creative freedom or censor things like diversity in games. I don't know how they plan to service this debt, and I don't know exactly what their plans for AI game development might be, if indeed that reporting is accurate, All I know is that none of this is good. None of it. It is more sovereign investment, more consolidation, more debt, more AI slop, all of it driven by people who could not give less of a shit about the actual art form of video games. This is a nation-building project that's looking to reshape hearts and minds over a generational span of time. There is no part of this that is motivated by a desire to make more, better games that improve this industry. And so while we don't know exactly how this will be bad, we will certainly find out one day. Turning now to more bad but less upsetting news, it's been a rough week for Payday fans, as developer Starbreeze seemed to do absolutely everything in their power to piss off their remaining player base. It all began last week when they announced a Payday 2 DLC subscription service that gives you full access to all the game's DLC, a move that was unsurprisingly not received well. But let's say hypothetically you didn't want to pay the subscription and instead wanted to just own all of the DLC permanently by picking up one of the bundles. Well, don't worry, Starbreeze took care of that little loophole. As pointed out by a Reddit user, Starbreeze appeared to have sneakily hiked the price on their Payday 2 infamous collection a few weeks prior with no announcement and no attention drawn to it. It wasn't a small price hike either, mind you, it was over $50. The community immediately called them out for it, forcing Starbreeze to apologize and revert the increase a day later, saying, quote, "Heisters, we've seen the feedback on the Infamy collection pricing change that happened earlier this month, and we have investigated. The price has been reverted to where it should be, and we apologize for this error," end quote. Investigated. Right, reminds me of that I think you should leave hot dog meme. Very difficult to believe that this was just some unfortunate coincidence, and a fairly baffling situation overall for a game that's 12 years old at this point and has a sequel, I might add. But given how poorly received that was, it's not surprising to see the studio trying to cash in on the more successful entry. Turning to basically the only piece of good news this week, the pushback against loot boxes ain't what it was back in 2018, but it does continue. And this week it achieved a big victory as Brazil is now the latest country to ban them, at least specifically in games that are aimed at people under the age of 18. The announcement came via a statute from the president of Brazil, in which one article asserts, quote, "Loot boxes offered in electronic games aimed at children and adolescents or likely to be accessible by them are prohibited in accordance with their respective age rating," end quote. This follows other countries who have done or are looking to do the same thing. Belgium successfully banned loot boxes back in 2018 as they were found to violate gambling laws. The Netherlands government has backed a bill for it that's yet to be passed. The UK continues to investigate the matter, and my homeland Australia now requires any game with loot boxes to be rated M15+, so younger people aren't as easily able to access them. Does this news make up for the Xbox Game Pass price tag increasing by 100% in Brazil? Well, it depends who you ask, but I think yes. A quick lightning round to finish off, and the upcoming 2D brawler roguelite Absolem has already been confirmed to be getting an animated series. This news comes from Gamepass, who says it's being handled by French animation studio Supermonks, who have done a lot of work for game trailers and also led the art direction for Absolem itself, so that's cool. Surprised to see this green lit given that the game isn't even out yet, but it seems like the demo got a very positive reception, so I guess that's enough these days. Then again, Kingmaker got a movie deal, and all we saw of that was a trailer, so I really shouldn't be too surprised. Bad news for Street Fighter fans, Capcom has announced a pay-per-view model for Street Fighter 6 tournaments, specifically the upcoming finals of Capcom Cup 16 and Street Fighter League, which takes place in March next year. While the matches will be free to watch a week later, if you want to catch it live, tickets will set you back approximately $27 a piece for digital viewing, with tickets for both events available in a bundle for $40. As expected, fans really don't like this. Main complaints include the fact that the pay-per-view costs more than the game itself currently, as Street Fighter 6 is 50% off during Steam's autumn sale running right now. And there's also the fact that these events are basically just marketing for Capcom, with ads popping up every 5 minutes. So yeah, there's no way I'm going to be paying the price of Silk Song for that, but I was never the target market anyway. Ed is an actual fighting games fan, and he says he wouldn't be caught dead paying this sum, so feel free to take his word over mine. Mario has finally done it. He has vanquished his arch nemesis Bowser once and for all, and by Bowser, I mean Doug Bowser, former boss man of Nintendo of America, and I say former because he just announced his retirement. He took to Twitter to say, quote, "Today I announced my plan to retire from Nintendo effective December 31st, 2025. Nintendo has been an integral part of my life for 44 years, starting with Donkey Kong Arcade as a kid in college. It's been an honor to contribute to this incredible company and bring our beloved characters and worlds to fans through our video games, theme parks, and movie experiences. I extend my best wishes to Devon Pritchard as she leads Nintendo of America forward, and I thank all of you for your passion and support of Nintendo, and you can count on me to remain a Nintendo fan," end quote. Doug's been with the company for roughly a decade now and took over the role of president from Reggie back in 2019, since then overseeing the end of the Switch 1 and the launch of the Switch 2. It'd be sad to see him go. He's always been present during the events and presentations, but with a name like Bowser, he was basically destined to be the face of the company. All good things must come to an end though, so best of luck to him. He will be replaced by Devon Pritchard, who has been at the company since 2006, the same year the Wii came out. Was she responsible? Unlikely, but if I ever get to interview her, I will ask her. Some layoffs news now, and Avalanche Studios has announced that they'll be completely closing their Liverpool studio, followed by layoffs at both their Malmo and Stockholm studios. A statement posted on their website reads, quote, "In light of current challenges to our business and the industry, we've thoroughly reviewed how to best ensure Avalanche Studios Group's long-term success. The review has led us to the difficult conclusion that we must make changes to our staffing and locations. As a result, we are proposing to close our Liverpool studio and initiate a collective consultation process as required by UK law. This will impact all Avalanches in Liverpool. The changes will also impact our other studio locations in Malmo and Stockholm, where we will reduce our workforce and restructure the teams to address our game's needs," end quote. The news is unsurprising given that until recently they were working on Microsoft's open world co-op smuggling game Contraband, which was announced back in 2021 only to be cancelled in July of this year as part of Microsoft's ongoing layoffs and cancellations. But yeah, it's still a real bummer. Avalanche have made some awesome games in the past between the Just Cause series and the underrated Mad Max game, so hopefully those affected are able to get on their feet really soon. Some sales milestones to cap things off. Rematch, the competitive football game from Seafood developer Slowclap, appears to be doing very well for itself as the studio announced that they had over 6 million players at September. That's a fantastic result. With that kind of money, hopefully they can keep supporting Rematch and make Seafood 2. As long as they make Seafood 2, that's what I really care about. Silent Hill F has surpassed 1 million copies worldwide in just 3 days. I absolutely love this game, particularly for its themes that very few games outside of the Silent Hill series dare to explore. So I'm really glad to see that Konami's risk-taking has been vindicated. Also nice to see the Silent Hill community come around to this one. It was very rocky in that opening weekend, but they got there in the end. As expected, Hades 2 has gone gangbusters, reaching nearly 113,000 peak concurrent players on Steam at the time of writing. That's compared to Hades 1, which achieved just half of that. Another massive win for Supergiant, and the review scores very much echo that enthusiasm. We'll come back to those later in the video. Slot machine roguelike Clover Pit has sold over 300,000 copies in just 4 days. Overjoyed at the reception the developers took to Steam with the news, quote, 300,000 copies sold in just 4 days, and we're just 2 little Italian devs, mamma mia, end quote. Careful guys, talking like that will get you sued by Nintendo. They continued, quote, "This is a dream come true, and can you believe it? Most of the top streamers picked up our game, and at one point we even had more Twitch viewers than Fortnite. Jesus Christ, never in our wildest dreams," end quote. Guess that delay to avoid Silksong really worked, huh? Finally closing out the indie roguelike extravaganza is a third-person vampire survivor like Megabonk, a game that lets you slay hordes of beasties as a ninja, a cowboy, or a skeleton doing sick kickflips with a skateboard. Hell yeah. This thing has gone kind of viral over the last week and recently surpassed 80,000 concurrent players on Steam. Not bad at all for a game made by one dude. A few interesting bits this week in terms of sort of free stuff. Over on the Epic Games Store, they're giving away Nightingale, which is currently in early access. This is the sort of steampunky, dimension-hopping MMO turned survival game from Inflection Games, which was formed by a bunch of former BioWare folks. It had a bit of a rocky launch to say the least, but it seems like people stuck with it at least for a bit. They released a patch in mid-2025 that turned off the online mode in favor of dedicated servers or offline play, and now they're bringing in a bunch of new people, I guess, so maybe it's time for a big update. They haven't said anything, but we'll see. One cool little freebie floating around that won't take up too much of your time is this messenger game that's doing the rounds. It can, very impressively, be played for free using your browser on your computer or your phone. It's a cute little urban delivery game on a tiny planet that spans a couple of small town blocks, and you basically make deliveries and just chill out. It's really nice. Find it at messenger.abedo.co. Enjoy. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, we're going to mop up some of the big announcements coming out of the Tokyo Game Show last week. One of the biggest ones being Yakuza Kiwami 3, which sees Sega go back to the original naming before they started calling it Like a Dragon. Totally not a marketing nightmare at all. As you'd expect, this is a full remake of the third game in the series, which originally came out in the West with a few content edits. Since this was before the series exploded in popularity, and they weren't sure how much hyper-specific Japanese culture we could take, there's a new combat system, new story beats, and some very notable cast changes that longtime fans are not happy with, but what they are happy with is that it'll come packed with a spin-off game called Dark Ties, which follows the game's charismatic antagonist, considered one of the best in the series. You win some, you lose some, I guess. This one's out on February 12th next year on all platforms except Switch 1. Annapurna Interactive also held a small showcase to show off 3 new games on its slate. One was called D-Topia from a Japanese indie duo it partnered up with some years ago. These folks used to work at RPG developer Level 5, and this game is a bit of a narrative adventure with hard choices and consequences, and you play as a caretaker of a residential care facility in a utopic future, which is, surprise, surprise, not such a utopia after all. The next one is a music-themed, turn-based rhythm RPG called People of Note, which follows the singer as she travels through different musical worlds to put together a band and save music. The trailer for this one really popped. Apparently, the environment artist behind Sword of the Sea also put a bunch of work into this one, so that checks out. And speaking of Sword of the Sea, the third game Annapurna announced was Demi and the Fractured Dream, which is also from an indie duo, and it's basically like, hey, what if we made a cool Zelda-like game that also had sword surfing in it? Comparisons aside, it does look really nice. One of those, I just can't believe it was made by a small indie team kind of games. No release dates yet for any of these Annapurna Interactive games yet, so stay tuned. A few other notable notable things were announced last week. Genshin developer Hoyoverse got out there and announced a second new game after revealing a creature collecting game last month. This new one is called Petite Planet, and it's a life simulator set on small planets. No release date, but you can bet your ass it'll have gacha and be on mobile and PC, and whoever decides to pay for console exclusivity, spoiler alert, it's probably not going to be Xbox. And finally, one we've been looking forward to is the next one from Hyperlight Drifter developers Heart Machine. This one is a 2D combat platformer game called Possessors. This one's now got a release date of 11th of November, and it's being published by Devolver, who also revealed a brand new game called Minos, a roguelike where you play as a minotaur and construct labyrinths to absolutely own heroes in. Cool concept, slated for 2026. All right, so what came out last week? Well, Hades 2 definitely made a splash, launching into 1.0 on OpenCritic. It instantly shot up to become one of the highest rated games of the year, sitting neck and neck with Claire Obscure at the time of writing with a mighty 92. Definitely a bit of discussion about what it meaningfully adds onto the near perfect formula of the original, but it's hard to find anyone who wasn't impressed by the overall piece of work. Lots of 10 out of 10s, but PC Gamer gave it one of the more measured scores with an 88 out of 100 and had this to say, quote, "Despite my issues with its pacing early on, Hades 2 won me over. It expands on the original game's imaginative take on Greek mythology, blending cerebral action, RPG combat, and slick narrative design into a complete package that feels distinct from the original. I'm glad I pushed through those early doubts because it's as good a game as I've come to expect from Supergiant, which hasn't missed yet," end quote. Austin's been plowing through this one for us. He's currently compiling his thoughts together for a review. Be sure to keep an eye out for that one real soon. Subscribe and ding the notification bell so you'll know the minute that video goes live. We'll blitz through a bunch of indies last week because there were just so many of them. Consume Me was that Persona meets WarioWare RPG that won the Indie Games Festival Grand Prize this year. That's got a strong 78 on OpenCritic and a very positive rating on Steam. Ed actually wrote a little review for that one, which you can read over on thisweekinvideogames.com if you're interested. I'll leave a link to that below the like button. Hotel Barcelona was the new one from Swery65 and Suda51, a 2D action roguelike. That one didn't fare quite as well, with a weak 62 on OpenCritic and a mixed rating on Steam. But if you know Swery's history, this is absolutely to be expected. Folks turn up for it anyway, and that's why he's still kicking around. Cloverpit is that slot machine roguelike that gave itself a delay because of Silksong. Apparently, this thing is like a 30-hour game, if you can believe it. Got a mighty 85 on OpenCritic and a very positive rating on Steam. A few complaints about the repetition and unfair odds, but my dudes, you are playing a literal slot machine game, so you got exactly what you bargained for. Mars First Logistics was that sick-looking vehicle and construction game that's like Death Stranding meets Tears of the Kingdom. Very positive reviews for its 1.0 launch. A slight step down from its overwhelmingly positive sentiment from its early access run, but 93% thumbs up on Steam ain't bad at all. Visiting Japan now with Silent Hill F, which you all know my thoughts about. Video review is up on the channel with a written review up on thisweekinvideogames.com as well. Long story short, Silent Hill is back, baby, and most people agree. A mighty 87 on OpenCritic, although the combat is a big turnoff for many. IGN copped a lot of flack for scoring this one 7 out of 10. Here's what they had to say, quote, "Silent Hill represents a fresh new setting to explore and a fascinatingly dark story to unravel, but its melee-focused combat takes a big swing that doesn't quite land," end quote. Look, I get it, true, but Silent Hill combat has kind of always sucked. So, I don't know, personally, I feel like the pros really outweigh the cons on this one. Sonic Racing Worlds landed at a strong 83 on OpenCritic, with people really appreciating its traditional kart racing format and its cool portal hopping mechanic, while Final Fantasy Tactics The Evilest Chronicles earned itself a mighty 89 on OpenCritic, true vindication for all those people that spent years begging for this remake to happen. And finally, Lego Party earned itself a strong 79, with the reviews out there saying that it's basically Mario Party, with some pretty clear improvements if you don't mind leaving Mario and his friends behind. And that was what came out last week, so what's coming out this week? Slightly less stacked than last week, thankfully, but only because Ghost of Yotei is no doubt going to dominate the conversation for PlayStation owners. This is the big headliner for Thursday, 2nd of October. The reviews did already come out for Yotei 1 week prior, where it currently sits at a mighty 87 on OpenCritic. Early critics mostly align with the fact that Sucker Punch has its own open world thing nailed down, though they didn't all see eye to eye on the story. I've got my own thoughts on that, and you can find my review on the channel very soon. Heads up, I'm actually in the process of moving house right now, so my output is going to be a little delayed on all fronts, but yes, the Yotei video is coming, so stay tuned. Joining Yotei on Thursday is a new remaster package from Nintendo collecting Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, which will be available for Switch 1 and 2. Remember when Nintendo already released a remastered version of Galaxy in 2020 in that Mario 3D All-Stars package, but it was only available for like 6 months before it was discontinued? Yeah, Pepperidge Farm remembers. Anyway, at least this new package won't be disappearing anytime soon. At least not so far as we know. Moving on to Friday, October 3rd, Bandai Namco is dropping Digimon Story Time Stranger on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. I don't know shit about Digimon, but from the chatter I see from highly enthusiastic Digimon fans online, the demo for this one is actually meant to be really good, and unlike the other creature-catching game, it's got a way bigger focus on a compelling narrative and, you know, actually looking like a modern video game. So there's that. A lot of people in the comment section of the Pokemon video I did were like, I've seen enough. I'm buying Digimon. Fair enough, but probably not the response that Nintendo was hoping for. On Tuesday, October 7th, 2XKO is coming out in early access. This is Riot's new free-to-play tag fighting game based on League of Legends, which has been in development for many years now. There's a big focus on simplifying the complex fighting game stuff while adding a bunch of strategic layers to it with different perks. Ed's been playing a bit of this one and thinks it's pretty good so far, despite initial hesitations with inputs being a bit too simple. It sounds like that's also been a common hurdle for fighting game veterans to wrap their heads around too. Press less buttons? What the? Be interested to see how far this one goes for Riot, given how relatively small fighting games are compared to the MOBA and shooter scene. PC only for this one. Last one for Tuesday is one we featured in our radar segment before, Battlesuit Aces, a mech tactics RPG that focuses on character development and team management while distilling the frenetic battles into a deck building card game. Interesting approach to this one, but the indie studio behind it is kind of known for uncommon genre matchups. The last game that put them on the map was Battle Chef Brigade, which had match 3 cooking battles and 2D combat. Folks at Among Us Studio Inner Sloth threw their money behind this one to make sure it got made. The chances are good that there's something here, PC, PS5, and Switch for this one. And finally, on Wednesday, October 8th, remember that trailer which featured a dude driving a pickup truck back in time and unleashing modern weaponry in the middle of a medieval battle? That game was called Kingmakers, and as I mentioned earlier in the show, in the time since that trailer released, it managed to get a movie deal based just on the trailer. But now the actual game is getting an early access release on PC. The game itself is a mix of third-person shooting action as well as a strategy layer used for commanding your medieval troops. Man, this one really snuck up on us, didn't it? Felt like it was going to be one of those games that just existed as a trailer for like 6 years before eventually coming out after 18 delay announcements. Nice to see such a quick turnaround. I'm probably not going to have time for this one this month. When that 1.0 release rolls around, I will be seated. Now, 2 of this week's releases are indie games that we've featured on our radar segment before, so we're gonna go smaller this time, not just like in terms of indie team size, but we're talking like bug sized. Roll it, Stu. This game is Isopod, and it comes from 2 indie developers based in Queensland, Australia. And why are we so obsessed with bug games down here? I really don't know. Anyway, imagine a physics-based 3D Sonic the Hedgehog game where you have to earn your speed and momentum by taking advantage of the terrain, except you're a cute little pill bug and you have a pretty good idea of what Isopod is all about. The thrill of movement and momentum. Oh, and you also have a magnetic grappling hook you can use to swing around, and you have to fight like a construction corporation run by fire ants. The duo behind this one are called S-Bug Games, and a few years ago they made a 2D game called Webbed, which really nailed the fantastic feeling 2D web slinging mechanic and featured freeform puzzles you solve by weaving your own webs. So yeah, their games are focused on great movement, and if that's your jam, you can find a link to this one over on our Steam curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This on Your Radar stuff we've recently covered. I'll leave a link to that below the like button. Our feel good story for the week is very, very feel good, and it proves once and for all that 6-year-old me was right. You are never too young to play Mortal Kombat, or at least be nearby while your mum plays it. This story is real and it comes courtesy of Dexerto. A woman who goes by the handle Legion recently competed in a Mortal Kombat tournament. She did pretty good too. She actually won. Not bad, but you may be thinking to yourself, what's so special about that? Well, Legion won this tournament while nursing her newborn 5-day-old child, a baby girl called Cereza. Guessing mum might also be a bit of a Bayonetta fan. What's crazier is that Legion delivered Cereza via C-section. So imagine 5 days after having your stomach cut open, you're sitting there at a fighting game tournament and you lock it in so hard that you win the $28 prize pool, but more importantly, a trip to Atlanta to compete at DreamHack. Legion celebrated the win on Twitter saying, quote, "So glad that we honestly left the house and did this. Our daughter's so chill around noises and car rides, possibly because I traveled so much while pregnant. Never want to stop doing things that I love, just need to adjust my life accordingly for our young daughter. I just want people to feel like no matter what, they can do things that they still love, even if it's in small chunks. Never feel like it isn't worth it," end quote. Isn't that nice? I think that's nice, and it's the perfect chaser to what has been a pretty shitty week of gaming news. I don't know how many more of these weeks I have in me for 2025, but time marches ever on, and so we're just gonna keep doing this thing each and every week, or until the Saudi royal family tells me when to stop. I think that's just how things work now. If you have had a good time, then please, I implore you, smash the like button like it's a Gamepass unsubscribe button. Speaking of subscriptions, subscribing to the YouTube channel is free, so you may as well do that. And if you want to get even more news, coverage, op-eds, columns, and newsletters, be sure to sign up over at thisweekinvideogames.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.